Good morning. So every industry has these fundamental moments in time when everything seems to just dramatically change. Certainly advertising, and at the intersection of technology and advertising, we've had a lot of these changes. I've been witness to that over the last 20 years, but it feels like these changes are accelerating if you've been in this business. For thousands of years, nothing seemed to change, and then you got the printing press around 1450. Fast forward about 5,000 years, you get the radio and the television set between 1920 and 1950, and so launches visuals and jingles and communication, and you get to form an emotional connection with advertisers. It's then 45 years later, the internet comes along and completely fractures the distribution channel, makes one-to-one communication possible. You get a consumer who's now able to research, investigate, and it fundamentally changes the distribution cycle of media. And just when you think you've got it all figured out, 4G comes along, and you get the mobilification of the web. And for the next 10 years, the sale of smartphones in this country is 7 times faster than the rate of population, right? And that fundamentally changes advertising once again. And from 2017 to current, we're all living through kind of this mass transition of predictable eyeballs and linear advertising as they move away from pay TV to app-enabled services, and we're losing the predictability of mass audiences, sports excluded. So now we've landed here at AI. Certainly an important topic, and as best I can tell, I'm the first of a series of speakers that are going to talk about this today. So consider me your warm-up act. By way of introduction, I'm James Moore. I'm from Scottsdale, Arizona. For the last 20 years, I've been in programmatic advertising. I built a site retargeting company called Fetchback. I don't know if anybody remembers that company. We got acquired by eBay in 2010. For the last 14 years, I've served as the Chief Revenue Officer for Simpli.Fi. Today, we're lucky enough to work with a little over 2,000 agencies in support of about 40,000 advertisers per month, over 140,000 live programmatic campaigns across channels at any given time, and very proud of the business that we built, but it's given me this great front row seat. But the topic for today is, in fact, AI. And why shouldn't it be? If you're on LinkedIn like I am, my feed is nothing but AI. If you're in a position of decision-making power at your agency or brand, you are inundated with vendors trying to sell you something related to AI. And if you have investors, if you've been lucky enough or unlucky enough to take money from companies who tell you how to run your business, they're probably talking to you about AI. So I'd like to begin this presentation by just sharing a quote. AI is one of the most profound things we are working on as humanity. It's more profound than fire and electricity. That's not a late-night scotch-infused Twitter hot take. That's a Stanford-educated, University of Pennsylvania-educated, Wharton-educated CEO of one of the largest companies in the world. And I want you to meditate on the statement for a minute. He's saying it's one of the most important things we're working on as a humanity, and he likens it to fire. Okay? When I see a quote like this, what this says to me is that this person has seen something that I have not seen yet. This person knows something that I do not know yet. And they're probably in a great position where they're on the leading edge of this. This means that they've had an awakening. They've had an enlightenment as it pertains to AI. And I think each of us are either going through an awakening now or destined to have our own personal awakening at some point over the next year to 5 years related to this technology. I'd like to take a moment to just speak to you a little bit about my own personal journey and how I've had my own kind of personal awakening. It did not happen overnight. I don't think it does for a lot of people, but it certainly has happened. I've now seen things that I cannot unsee, and now I am obsessed with this topic of artificial intelligence. In the summer of 2021, our company got acquired by Blackstone, which is one of the largest private equity companies on the planet. They own brands like Ancestry.com, The Cosmopolitan, Spanx, Bumble, you name it. They own a lot of really big companies. Some pretty smart people with a lot of MBAs get on a lot of calls with me. Board meetings, weekly reviews, monthly reviews. We get together as commercial leaders, the head of sales of all the Blackstone companies, and we pontificate about what needs to happen in our businesses. What I can tell you is that for the last year and a half straight, every conversation I have with them involves artificial intelligence. They fundamentally believe that we are all in a race and that there are going to be two kinds of companies. Those who embrace, adopt, and implement AI quickly and effectively, not only, by the way, to improve the workflow and experience and performance of the customers you support, but to completely change the employment dynamic of the productivity of your employees, how many dollars it takes to run a business. They believe that there are winners and losers and that in 5 years there will be those who did it right and those who don't exist. And they are all over us. So as you can imagine, as somebody who's running a very large sales organization at a very fast-growing company, when you take a check from a big company like this and you have these kinds of calls, it has occurred to me that maybe I should care about this subject, okay? Which then brings me to my next moment. I don't know if any of you guys do New Year's resolutions, but I was having my own Scotch and Field moment in December of this year, and I was writing my own vision board for 2025. And I sat down and I said, it's time for me to investigate this a little further. Obviously, I've seen all the free tools that are out there to investigate AI. I've sat through all the sessions that my owners have forced me to listen to. But what I did is I wrote a personal check, and I enrolled in a 6-week course at the University of Arizona. What that did was it unlocked 8 to 10 hours a week for 6 weeks of online courses. I engaged in 2 to 4 hours a week in live classes and consult with peers. And I had homework for the first time in many, many years at the age of 51. This was an incredible eye-opening experience for me. They took me everything from a basic understanding of what AI is, how it works, how I can use it to become more productive, how it can be used correctly and incorrectly to do many tasks. And then we got into more profound things like data analysis and the building of custom GPTs and AI agents, which to me was something you cannot unsee once you have had some personal experience doing it, okay? So, as you move forward, I don't have time to tell you everything I learned in 6 weeks. Okay, but what I can do is share a little bit of information with you to see if we can't just fundamentally get on the same page about where AI is today. So AI has become quite normalized over the last 10 years. You've been actually interfacing with it a great deal. So recommendation engines are quite normal. The use of voice agents are quite normal. And I, in fact, have been in programmatic advertising since, 1997, and we've been doing bid factors or multi-combinatorial bidding now for the better part of a decade. And if you don't know what that means, it means whenever you're buying an ad programmatically, there's all kinds of data that goes into a decision to say, do I want to buy that ad and how much am I prepared to pay? What device are they on? What operating system, what publisher, which creative are we serving, what ad size, what ad placement, what do we know about this consumer, who wants to buy them, how much are they prepared to buy? If you have 40 bid factors, you have over 1 trillion combinations of data. These machine learning models have been in use for 10 years and they're only getting better and smarter. Flash forward to today and what's happening with artificial intelligence is actually fundamentally different. Because what's happening, of course, is the use of generative AI, which means that artificial intelligence is now capable of original thought. It's now capable of prediction. It has the ability to create both in text, video, and in visual forms of all kinds. And this is primarily being enabled through the use of large language models, or LLMs, that allow people like you and I to actually build and create without having to be developers. As a matter of fact, does anybody work in a company where you're like, we got to build AI, and they keep sending it to the product team and going, why aren't you guys building AI faster? The problem with that is that AI in its current form actually thrives through the construction of these large language models, which means it rewards people who are powerful communicators. I don't know many of the engineers on my staff who are powerful communicators. So actually, I can build models and agents faster than they can, and probably better than they can, because I'm a more powerful communicator than they are. It's a completely different skill set. So by now, everybody here has got some level of experience using an LLM or a large language model. Some of you are using it on a regular basis. Maybe some of you have toyed around with it a little bit. In truth, there are better than 30 large language models that are readily available to the average consumer today. Every one of these things has got its own strengths. Every one of these things has its own weaknesses. If anybody's tried to use these things, you've learned the firsthand, they're really bad at math. They're terrible at math because they actually don't see numbers, they see tokens. There's a reason for that. Another thing that's fundamentally wrong with these tools today is bad prompt in equals bad prompt out. People use it like a search engine. It is not a search engine. It's meant to be communicated with. It takes skill, and you can prompt and learn back and forth. And they are capable of bias, and there's something known as hallucinations. These hallucinations essentially means that it will make up stuff. It will actually try to predict why are you asking a question and try to get ahead of that. It'll provide you information that you didn't even ask for. It'll attribute quotes to people who don't exist. It'll do all kinds of fun things. But it's pretty darn fun, and it's pretty darn powerful, and it can make you pretty darn effective. What's really cool about these things, if you've not had any personal experience with this, is what we're seeing is the explosion of custom GPTs and AI agents. And let me just say, a custom GPT basically means instead of using a general purpose LLM, like going into ChatGPT and saying, help me build a media plan, as an example, it means you can actually go up in the top right-hand side and say, my GPT, and create a GPT that is uniquely trained on your information. You can give it a task, a role, a purpose. You can define what constitutes success and failure, and then you can begin training that module. You can begin loading data. It never forgets the data. You can prompt to see how it responds. You can give it instructions. You can generally fundamentally change the way the GPT works. In fact, what you're doing is taking it from a large language model in many ways to kind of like a small language model because you're narrowing the scope of what it's focused on and you're giving it rules. So if you've not done this, I really encourage you to go home tonight. Before you're done with dessert, you can build a custom GPT. And as a matter of fact, an AI agent is nothing more than a custom GPT that is interfacing with traditional software or multiple GPTs in an open source network that are communicating with each other. 99% of the companies who are calling on you today selling some version of AI have learned something that you haven't learned yet, which is they can build these things quickly and produce them for you to produce a specific result. Once you know how these things are built, you will be where I'm at today, which is like literally any company who calls on me, 99% of what they build, if I just pour myself a large drink and dedicate myself for a few hours, I can probably build what they're pitching me. It's that easy and it's that available to you, okay? So my first experiment in the world of AI agents and custom GPTs is I went out and I built something for my own internal sales team called Simpli.Fi Sales Outreach Pro. Very basic custom GPT function that any company and any employee in a company can do. In my particular instance, I have 195 salespeople of various degrees and experience calling on self-service buyers, managed service buyers, linear-oriented buyers, digital buyers, heads of agencies, programmatic traders, CMOs. Everybody cares about something different. Everybody's frame of reference is completely different, and every mode of communication that we're communicating in is incredibly different. Whether I'm communicating in LinkedIn, via email, via call script, whatever it happens to be. I'm able to upload my brand guidelines, my tone of voice, every case study that I've ever written, every pitch deck, every competitor pitch deck, every training I've ever done, I've uploaded into this deal, and I've prompted it and built a prompt library and trained it to the point where a salesperson in my company, if they're wanting to do outreach to a client, a former client, or a prospect with some basic prompting skills can generate content that is highly relevant, accurate, with some rules based around it that I have designated that is better than anything that they would ever create, and every day it gets smarter. It's pretty dang powerful and it's great, but it's just one example of applying it to a specific function in a business. And you too can build these things. So, What's happening, obviously, in our business is that you're seeing this kind of explosion of AI happening across a broad range of industries, and you're going to start to witness most of what is happening today is the use of AI agents and the use of generative AI that's interacting with traditional software models to fundamentally transform the consumer experience, and it's coming in all kinds of forms, and you'll start to get this kind of in-tune visualization of like, oh, wow, they deployed it this way. Oh, wow, isn't that interesting that they applied it that way? And certainly this is going to have a big impact on marketing. So this isn't a sales pitch. I'm not here to talk to you about Simpli.Fi, but I think one of the questions would be, give us some examples from your own company where these things are being applied to try to tackle a particular task. I'll leave it to you to define whether it's a worthwhile endeavor or not. But here's one example. We rolled out something, probably the industry's 5,000th AI solution called Autopilot, right? Super original name. But if you're a programmatic media buying platform, historically you have built your media buying software for programmatic traders. Programmatic traders want maximum transparency. They want maximum controls. They want dozens of buttons. They want all kinds of levers. They want to be able to insert their bias. They want to be able to pull all kinds of detailed reports. But it turns out there's an entire industry of brands and agencies out there that would love to be self-service, but don't want to have to staff that level of expertise and don't want to have to train for that level of detail, and they're willing to sacrifice transparency in exchange for automation to basically say, how can I go from my client has an idea to me being on TV in 5 minutes? And that's what we're trying to accomplish with Simpli.Fi Autopilot AI. How can I go in quickly, build a multi-omni-channel plan, build the creatives, take it to market across multiple creatives, multiple tactics, generate reporting, do optimization, and communicate along the way with limited inputs. And so far, it's been received well. Another area that's obviously ripe for disruption is this idea of media planning. In our world, we've been using estimation and avails for as long as I can possibly remember. This kind of art of planning across walled gardens and non-walled gardens, this interaction of traditional media and digital media, the ability to leverage all the different disparate estimation and avail solutions, and then the ability to input natural bias, such as ad frequency and other beliefs, into a system has existed for some time. But now you can augment that through AI. You can have it ping across 140,000 campaigns at any given time to tell you, based on goals and objectives, what fundamentally works, what fundamentally does not work, what would it recommend. Can I interface with a large language model and ask questions and have it fundamentally come back? Based on the answer, can I say, change the plan and have it just input the changes across the plan? We have rolled this out. I think a lot of companies have rolled out some version of this. And we are iterating on this as fast as possible because we believe media planning is an area that's ripe for disintermediation. So with the few minutes I've got here today, I want to turn my attention toward agencies. I came across a headline recently that if you work at an ad agency, you might find disturbing. As somebody who sells to ad agencies, I found it a little bit disturbing, but it certainly raises questions for agencies. And the question was, can AI agents completely replace media agencies? So for the 100 companies that are currently building AI agents and stitching these solutions together to try to make agencies better, there's another 100 companies out there basically saying, how can I replace it completely? They are taking every single function that exists within an agency, from accounting and finance and media reconciliation to white space analysis, planning, creative, everything, and they are building independent agents. They are training them methodically. They are linking them together, and they are trying to see how fast they can go from a brand problem to an output execution solution, and how can they do it with the fewest possible humans touching it. They're basically saying, how can I build a $2 billion revenue agency and do it with 5 people? This is happening today, okay? It obviously raises some serious questions, right, that every agency probably needs to sit down and begin discussing. If you're not already discussing them, some of them I wrote here. What makes us indispensable in an AI-driven world? How should we evolve beyond execution of services? Do we need to rethink our team's skills and structure? How can we use AI to enhance but not replace our agency? Now, the skeptics in you are probably sitting there going, hey, James, they can't replace human ingenuity. They can't replace creativity. Well, I can tell you from my limited interaction with Duarte at Dojo, he basically says, well, we're going to try. He says, I'm going to take every marketing campaign that's ever been built by Publicis, every marketing campaign that's ever been built by Group N, every marketing campaign that's ever been built by InRepublic. I'm going to upload every article and interview from Professor Galloway, from Deutsch, they're taking all the greatest minds, most creative minds in the industry. They're taking everything they've ever written, everything they've ever said, everything they've ever produced, and they are training their models so that when brands come to them, they can say, what would Deutsch say? Show me 3 ideas that Group M would come up with. Show me two ideas that InRepublic would present and explain to me why they would do this. It is powerful what is happening right now, and it is powerful what is coming, and it's going to fundamentally change the skill sets necessary in order to thrive and succeed in a fast evolving world. So every company at this point, if you have any kind of technology, is ripping apart your architecture and saying, how are we going to leverage AI from end to end in order to improve the workflow and experience and performance of that technology? What you see here is a diagram of the technology that my company built, heavily redacted. If I didn't say that word enough, heavily redacted, okay? But what you can see is that we've taken from end to end and basically said through every component and workflow, where can AI fundamentally improve this software? Where can it improve the workflow? Where can it improve the productivity of the internal resources? Where can it improve the productivity of the external resources? How can it fundamentally change performance? And this is just really the beginning. These are the areas we've identified, and I would imagine that almost every company today probably has or should have some diagram of how they go to market from end to end and are having discussions about where AI is going to make a difference in that business, certainly in the ad agency space. So, with the 3 minutes here, I would just say this. According to a recent Forbes analysis, more than 60% of business owners think that AI will increase productivity, and workers who use generative AI tools can boost their performance by up to 40% compared to those who do not use them. Part of having an awakening, part of embracing these tools and beginning to adopt and utilize them is you're going to start seeing a skill divide take place within your own business between you and the peers you are forced to interact with. Let me tell you my own personal experience. As a salesperson, I've got a 17-page deck on creative services. Somebody came to me recently and they said, hey, we've got this new vendor for high impact something or other. And so I said, you know what? I don't want 17 slides. I've got an overview presentation. Can you take all the information that's in the 17 slides and consolidate it into one cohesive slide that looks like these slides for this deck? I sent it to marketing. They meditate on it for a week. Then they come back to me and they say, hey, what do you think? After a couple of weeks, I basically took the 17 slides, I assigned AI a persona, I uploaded the slides, I had it extract the data from the 17 slides, compile it into the relevant points that need to be in one slide. I had it lay out options for me based on creative expertise on how to best represent these things. I uploaded the presentation that I'm inserting it to. I had asked it to give me 5 ideas. I asked it to produce a visual draft. I went through, I prompted, I interacted, I selected, and then I said, I want you to generate instructions for me to hand to my creative team so that they don't mess this up. I did it in 8 minutes. It takes them 2.5 weeks to get me back a version that I don't like. That's what's happening. And as that's happening, it becomes very difficult for me in my position to tolerate working in that environment. And that kind of divide is going to start happening within companies. So this is a call to arms for you guys to begin having your own personal awakening, to begin increasing the skill set. So I've got 5 items here in the last 60 seconds to share with you. 4 items, excuse me. Most common self-inflicted limitations that I'm going to challenge you to take on head on in this new world. Number 1, set your skepticism and or your fatigue on this topic aside. There's a lot of news on this. A lot of it's not positive, and there's a lot of people who are just kind of like have opinions, and you're allowed to have an opinion. And obviously when you're getting inundated with messages, you can just get tired and tune it out. I would encourage you not to do either. I would encourage you to pay attention. Number 2, prompting illiteracy is real, folks. Garbage in equals garbage out. Large language models are not search engines. the richness of your prompts, the clarity of your prompts, the persona on the receiving end, the persona on the receiving end. It's meant to be conversational. If you can give yourself just a little bit of education on prompting, it will fundamentally change the output of what you are seeing in any AI tool that you are using. It is a skill set and a limitation on your side, not on the technology side. And once you master it, it's going to open up an incredible array of productivity and solutions for you and your business. A lot of you maybe have had lack of exposure to this, or you think in your current role, hey, I'm in creative, hey, I'm in analytics, hey, I'm in reporting. This isn't that important to me. I promise you, you need exposure to this. And then finally, I would say, people say that there's generally a lack of time. My advice to you, my call to arms with these presentations that are coming up, make time. Pay attention, invest in this. Come back and tell me how you've had your own personal awakening. Amaze us all with all the amazing productivity and things you're implementing in your agency. So I leave you with one final quote. The role of marketers will shift from execution to orchestration and strategy. And this is a new statement, but now an old statement. AI is not going to take your job, but I'm quite convinced that somebody who knows how to use AI might. So it's certainly important at this point for everybody to have their own personal awakening, embrace it, investigate it. Thank you for your time this morning.